Adrian, I'm curious. You've been hearing a lot about EO recently, but what exactly is EO? How is it different from SEO? Maybe you can explain a bit more about that.
Yeah, let's take an example. You go to ChatGPT, you open ChatGPT and you type, what are the best French restaurants in Singapore, right? ChatGPT is not going to give you 10 blue links. It's going to give you a few names, right? You're going to trust ChatGPT and you're going to buy, basically. You're going to book in one of these restaurants. Now imagine you are the business owner and the name that is displaying by ChatGPT isn't yours, but that's your competition, right? Basically, you just lost a booking, you just lost a lead. That stands for answer engine optimization. That's the biggest shift in online visibility. More people, and we can dive into the numbers a bit later, are using AI platform for search and are moving away from traditional Google search towards AI search.
I'm curious, what is the correlation between SEO? Because how does AEO actually work? Is it pulling from traditional sources like Google, or what is it pulling from to get those results?
That's a good question. If I try to make it simple for SEO, you type your search in the Google search bar, something like best French restaurant Singapore, right? What is happening? You have the Google robot scrolling the web, scrolling different websites, and then showing you the blue links, right? That's how Google is working. So that's basically how SEO is working in the backend. When you type what are the best French restaurants in Singapore, it's going to tokenize it in different keywords. Then it's going to do his own web browsing using Google. It doesn't care about the Google ranking, just the sources from Google browsing across different sources. I can take an example after. I can share my screen and show you in ChatGPT. And it's going to use different sources of authority, sources ChatGPT considers as trust and authority sources, right? And then using these sources, it's going to provide you with total 3 to 4 different names.
I'd love an example because you mentioned it doesn't necessarily correlate to Google's rankings. It sounds like it's pulling its own rankings, but I'm curious if you could share an example in terms of what that looks like. How does it work in a real life example? You mentioned it's pulling from Google as well as Bing, which I think a lot of us have forgotten since most of us are Google dominant recently.
ChatGPT just crossed the 1 billion daily searches, right? So every day, 1 billion queries are made on ChatGPT. Very far from Google, it's 14 billions, right? 1 4. The difference is huge. But ChatGPT already beats Bing, right? So it's already above Bing in terms of daily search. It's catching up on TikTok, which is quite surprising to me. That's the reality of the number. Yeah, I agree. Bing is not used by a lot of people, and more people are using ChatGPT nowadays.
I can definitely believe that.
You'll see. I'm going to do a search in ChatGPT and Perplexity. Even if it has, as I was telling you, 1 billion queries per day, Perplexity it's 20 million. So 50 times less. But it's interesting to compare the difference between both. You'll see that ChatGPT is using different sources than Perplexity. Perplexity, for example, relies a lot on Reddit and YouTube. ChatGPT relies a lot on Wikipedia, and Reddit is number 2. Across all AI platform, you'll see that platform like Quora, Reddit, TripAdvisor for hospitalities are very used by AI platform and by LLMs. G2, Product Hunt, used a lot for more like SaaS company
Mm.
when you looking for SaaS. Let me share my screen.
Let's share your screen. I had a question about the differences between that versus Claude or Gemini when you're searching. But yeah, let's take us through this example.
So we are in ChatGPT, as you can see, right? I'm just going to make sure it's going to serve the web. What do you want to search, Joe? Should we go for the French restaurant again?
Best French restaurants in Singapore.
Okay.
Curious what comes up.
It's a very simple prompt. You can add much more context, but we want to make it simple.
Yeah.
So I'm going to search the web. So here, basically what he's querying Bing or Google to do the web browsing. Then Google or Bing is going to pull the data. I spent
Yeah.
5 years in Singapore, so I guess we kind of relate to this French restaurant. I definitely recommend this one. Where was the source? Yeah. So we can click on that. right? And here, basically, you're going to see the sources used by ChatGPT to
Mm,
provide you with this answer. As I was telling you, Wikipedia is used a lot. So ChatGPT relies a lot on Wikipedia. And then timeout, Reddit, and some other like listing. So basically, platform providing you with list of restaurants, so you can see Yelp. So basically, what ChatGPT and more broadly, more generally speaking, LLMs are looking for, they are looking for authority. They are
mm.
looking for signals, trusted advice. They are not looking at Google ranking. They care about different items compared to traditional SEO. Let's do the same thing in Perplexity. So I'm lazy, I'm just copy paste.
Yeah.
Boom.
I mean, one thing I like about this from a user experience is it's cleaner than a Google search. You get everything in there, the pluses and minuses for each category, but the different results.
For example, Odette is not there. It's not there. You can see we have Les Amis still, Claudine, Gavroche, okay, fine. This one I recommend a lot for. That's a pain, right? They are invisible in Perplexity. I don't know why, but usually they put the sources on
That says that.
the website. So maybe not the best search we could have done in the sense that we could have asked for, let's say, alternative to Stripe, for example.
Yeah.
And for sure, it would have gone through Reddit, it would have gone through YouTube, it would have gone through G2, sorry, Product Hunt, this kind of platform. But you can see like the results are different. For example, if I were to work on this to be visible in Perplexity. Why? Because in terms of figures, right? At the moment, and I can stop maybe sharing my screen for now.
If you go back to the sources, it's interesting because ChatGPT pulls from mainstream sources, Wikipedia and Reddit. Yeah.
Reddit is number one for Perplexity, right?
Interesting. Yeah.
So we need to dive to understand why. For example, if we're doing other queries, you can see that YouTube and Reddit are number one for Reddit, number two sources used by Perplexity, basically. Whether you can do 10 searches on ChatGPT, you'll see Wikipedia and Reddit most of the time.
One other thing, we can't forget a human side of this. Obviously, it provided multiple options. Based on your experience, you're trying some of these restaurants. Which one provided a better, actual, more accurate result in your experience? Do you think it was ChatGPT or Perplexity in this example? Just out of curiosity.
I will say, of course, it's one of the most expensive, right?
Yeah.
Three-star Michelin. At the same time, highlighted Bistro du Sommelier, also one of my favorite, way less expensive. That's why I always advise people not only to rely on one platform. The best LLM to use for restaurants, places to go, places to dance, to hang out will be Grok, the
Mhm.
AI from X. I still call it Twitter. I was born with Twitter because it's using all the live data from tweets. So it provides a much more real-time information on the market. So whenever I'm looking for like a restaurant, a bar, something to visit, I'm going to ask ChatGPT, yes. I'm going to ask Perplexity sometime. Use Grok 100%.
That's interesting because Grok, from what I understand, pulls directly Twitter. Is it pulling from external sources
Yes,
beyond that?
it does like web search, but the main advantage of Grok is pulling data from Twitter directly. People tweeting, saying, I've been to this restaurant, it's fabulous, or this one's not great, or taking photos, or whatever. Grok is using this as a sources to provide you with recommendation. And the recommendation is extremely powerful. And I will say, see ChatGPT or Grok or Perplexity like a friend. Are you going to ask a friend, okay, what restaurant should I go with my wife or my girlfriend tonight? Do you have any idea? Your friend is going to provide you with, I don't know, 5 possibilities. Most probably, you're going to go for one of these 5. Exactly the same for LLMs. And that's why the conversion rate coming from AI traffic is insane compared to traditional search. So in terms of numbers, AI traffic represents less than 1% of the general traffic. Okay, so it's ridiculous. It's not even 1%. But in terms of conversion rate, we are talking about 30 times higher to 40 times higher, depending on whether it's a B2C request or a B2B request. Why?
Mm.
Because when someone is prompting, what are the best fresh restaurants in Singapore? That's not a Google query. That's someone ready to book a restaurant, right? Ready to buy, basically. And that makes a lot of difference in terms of conversion rate.
Obviously, that depends on how heavily X or Twitter is used in that country. So obviously in US, it's massive, but I'm thinking about specific markets within Asia Pacific. You have Singapore, Thailand. If it's not that widely used, then the sample set in terms of data that it's pulling from would be relatively limited, I imagine.
That's why it's also using the web. It's not only relying on X. We are making studies and we are using it and we try to understand basically how it works. But now I'm not in Singapore anymore, Island, right? I can tell you every time I need to find something like a restaurant, I go with Grok. It's been quite successful since the beginning. So all the recommendation it made was quite on point, I would say.
Got it. So once again, it showed that I'm sure if we do it with Grok Wells, we probably get maybe different results as well. So I'm just wondering from a business owner or a marketing leader's point of view, you mentioned ChatGPT has the lion's share, but should we invest all our efforts in terms of AEO for ChatGPT, or should we spread it across Perplexity, Grok, Claude, Gemini? What do you advise for your clients in terms of where should they be focusing on?
Yeah, very good question. So first, all businesses needs to start focusing on AEO. Doesn't mean you need to stop your SEO effort, right? Both are complementary. It's not SEO versus AEO. It's together. AEO, it's a new way for you to bring qualified traffic and to generate leads onto your website. Now, coming back to the question, I will say start focusing on ChatGPT for sure. ChatGPT represents, as I was telling, 1 billion daily queries. Perplexity is number one with 20 million. So ChatGPT in terms of LLM traffic represents something like 87%, if I'm correct,
Mhm.
of the total traffic. And then you have Gemini, Copilot, actually. Then you have Claude, then you have Perplexity, and they are all around 2 to 5%. So
Mhm.
focus on ChatGPT, but because you're going to focus on ChatGPT, which is an LLM, it's going to help you be recommended by the other platform.
Makes sense. We have a few questions from our audience, one of which, and I think you touched on this, but can a website rank successfully for AEO if it's not ranking well for?
It's not because you are ranking number one on Google that you are in a good position, because as I was saying, LLMs work differently, right? So they don't care about Google ranking. So you can be page one of Google and being invisible on ChatGPT and the other LLMs. Now, having absolutely zero SEO and be recommended by LLMs, the only way it could happen is if it's like you have a lot of mentions, you have a lot of your brand is cited like a lot on Reddit, on Quora, on this kind of platform. So basically, there is a lot of brand recommendation power on this kind of platform, right? So in this case, yes, you could appear. But I would say SEO is the foundation for sure to have a good chance to be recommended by the AI platform.
We still need to start with SEO, and then once we build the foundations, then we start focusing on AEO.
No, you can start focusing on both, actually. You can start working on both, right? Because again, working on SEO, we talk about like meta tags, we talk about backlinks, we talk about keywords, right? Where for AEO, we focus on industry prompt, we focus on structured content. So like a SEO content is going to be a long article with 2,000, 3,000 words to fill it up keywords. SEO LLMs are looking for well-structured, clear content with straightforward answer, right? So very different type of content. And S is also looking for a lot of citations on platform. So it's a different work. Both need to be done in parallel, actually. And actually, for most of our clients, we are not only doing the AEO, we are doing SEO plus AEO.
Okay. It sounds like for AEO, it's very similar to a Google rich snippet, pulling a piece of that article that's structured, usually bullet points or a numbered list, and then it's placing it at the top of Google in terms of rich snippet. But it sounds like it's pulling something similar directly from EO or ChatGPT.
If I try to make it simple, it's not that simple, but for the audience to understand, it needs to be extremely well structured, right? Straight to the point. Start with a very short summary. The kind of summary ChatGPT is going to provide you, basically LLM love this, right? Because you are providing a straightforward answer to their question. And then very well structured with like bullet point, as I was saying. So AEO content is more like 300, 400 word length compared to SEO, where it's more like 2000, 3000, because keywords is the key. And then we mainly rely on backlinks for SEO, whether we more rely on citations for SEO.
Got it. I want to put together this in a real life scenario because a lot of our audience really enjoy the step-by-step process. And obviously, you don't have to give away all the secrets, but I just wanted to have a real life example. So I have multiple businesses, but let's say I wanted to rank for best keynote speaker in Asia Pacific. What would be the first thing I would need to do if I was doing this from scratch? So I didn't have a website. Obviously, building a website is one. What would be the step-by-step process you would take a client through in this example?
Yeah. So audit and audit first, right? Start with auditing your situation. So what's your AEO situation? We are auditing two things. First, we are auditing your content, right? So let's say you still have a bit of content, right? So we are auditing your content and how far your content is to be optimized, basically. Right? And then we are auditing the prompt. So what you just said, it's keyword, best keyword speaker, keynote speaker, Asia Pacific. That's exactly what you will type in Google. So based on this keyword, we need to find industry prompts. Basically, the prompts, you need to get visibility. First, we start with these two audits. Then we audit how your brand is positioned on the platform that are used by LLM. So Reddit, Quora, TripAdvisor, if you are in hospitality, stuff like that. So that's the audit, the first month. Based on this, we define a clear action plan. So then we start working on the content. We start working on the mention, the citation. And then every month we do this work to make your brand more visible on the platform. So it starts with an audit, of course, and to be able to create optimized content for your website and to create mention, like to make your brand mentioned or cited by other sources across the web.
Got it. So in my case, if you search my name, you'll get dozens of articles from social media to mainstream media. The name has some presence there, but let's say very similar to a company launching a new product. This is a brand new product, so I don't have any content available. I have content available for tons of other subjects, but not that. So let's say I'm starting from scratch. Once again, you've done the audit, the name shows up, there's plenty of mentions around the name, but in terms of that product, nothing's showing up because I haven't built anything yet. So step one, do the audit, make sure what shows up. You mentioned checking the prompt, similar to keyword research, looking at long tail
Yeah,
keywords on SEO. So that's very similar as well too. But I guess the next step would be, okay, we found we're not ranking for that, obviously, because we haven't built any content around that. Would we build a website and start building like those 200, 2,000, 3,000 word blog posts that rank for SEO? Or would we go straight to the chase and just, hey, here's an FAQ answering the top 10 questions you might have about how to find a keynote speaker in Asia Pacific, for example, and then just have those 300 to 400 word articles that go out that are optimized for where should we spend our time content creation if you don't have that out yet?
for sure. If you start really like from scratch or have a website, that's how you can be visible on the web, even if LinkedIn, for example, it's a way also for you to be visible. But if you look at the sources used by LLMs, not really using LinkedIn a lot. So having a website, that's key. Create or optimize your existing content. If you don't have any content, generate and create once, right? And then balance between having content that is AEO optimized because you want to be visible, content that also is going to help your SEO. But now we are really focusing all the content to be AEO optimized. So we start with content and then we put strategies in place for your brand or for yourself, for you to be more mentioned on other website or trusted platform used by LLMs again. So it's quite similar to SEO. Every month you will create new blog articles on specific keywords, but here we focus more on prompt, and we're going to generate content for very specific industry prompt you want to be visible.
So I guess two questions I have, one of which is keyword research is basically easily done. There's keyword AdWords. How would you actually do prompt research to identify the right prompts for AEOs to pull you up from? So that's question number one. And before I forget, for the content you created, I'd love to get your thoughts on it. I would never do this, but let's say I threw a bunch of stuff in ChatGPT and I copy and pasted a 2,000 word article on how to pick the best.
Don't do this. Don't do this. Right? Never
Yes,
copy paste
okay.
from ChatGPT.
Okay, so never copy and paste. Got it. But let's say it's 80%. I changed the introduction and conclusion, but the rest is ChatGPT focus. That's going to hurt my chances of getting ranked on SEO.
So first question was about, sorry, I forget the
Yes.
first.
How do you figure out the right?
We solved this by building our internal proprietary tools in the agency. We couldn't find anything on the market to fill this gap. So we have now our own tool that we are using in the agency to start with the keyword, basically the keyword that you are ranking, right, on Google, and automatically transform this keyword into industry prompt, right? And then we continue to work with the clients to fine-tune the prompt based on that. So what are the best French restaurants? It's simple, straightforward. Key as a French restaurant in Singapore, you need to be recommended, but it could be Michelin star restaurant. It could be under $200 restaurant or
Hmm.
restaurant in Novena or with a Bayview, right? So we can imagine a lot of different variation from
Yeah.
the prompt. So we have our tool that is doing part of the job, right? And then we fine tune it with the client manually. That was the first question. The second question was asking ChatGPT to generate like the perfect AEO optimized article and copy paste it onto your
Hmm.
website. Never do this. Review the content that has been generated by ChatGPT and to make sure that everything is okay. Basically, my point here is like never trust ChatGPT 100%. Never copy paste without reviewing at all any answer or anything generated by any LLMs. Always spend time to review, validate something generated by LLMs.
Because that's what I see a lot of people doing this on LinkedIn. And I imagine the same thing's going on websites. It's just copying and pasting without actually double checking. It's also easier to see duplicate content. Unless you change the context, you're going to get the same content over and over. Last question. I want to understand the differences between SEO and SEO. Is the prompt more of a question? Because for keywords in Google, best French restaurants, for example, would a prompt example for ChatGPT be like, what are the best French restaurants? Or is it more
Yeah,
that people are searching for deeper, like under $200?
it depends. It's not a tips, but the more context you provide to ChatGPT, the better the result. As simple as that. Having said that, a lot of people are still typing what I call one-line prompt, which is going to be what are the best French restaurants in Singapore. But the
Mm.
main difference, it's like Google, you are using keyword, best French restaurant Singapore or Novena or whatever. Whether in ChatGPT you're going to use natural language because you are
Mm.
considering ChatGPT more human, if I can say so, and you're going to communicate, interact with him as you would do with a human. So you're going to type a full sentence, right? I guess
Mm.
that you are doing, right? And by doing so, you should provide more context. And so the prompt's going to be bigger, longer. That's the job of making sure we cover all these different prompts from the most simple one, what are the best French restaurants in Singapore.
Last question from the audience is how long does it take to see the results of AEO on a brand slash website?
I will say, based on our experience, minimum 3 months. So, of course, it depends on the competition, the prompts you want to be visible from, etc. You want visibility, stuff like that. The bare minimum is 3 months. It really depends on the competition. 3 to 6 months, basically.
Is that 3 to 6 months to show up in the results? As you see in the ChatGPT example, we had 7 or 8 options. Referring to Google terms, people look at the top one and say, oh, that looks good. Is there a way to game the system so we show first in the ChatGPT results as well, not just in the top 8, because most people will not go to level number 8 in their.
Exactly. Exactly. So now, for example, we are working with a hotel, very famous brand actually in one of the biggest city in Australia. If you type just what are the best hotel in this city, they appear at the very bottom. If you type what are the top 5 hotel in this city, they are invisible. So it also depends on the initial prompt and question. First, we want the brand visible. Then make it visible at the top, like minimum top 3, because unless you ask, GPT or Gemini never provide you a single name. They always provide at least 3. So first you need to make sure to be in this 5. Then we want youth in the top 3.
Got it.
And
That
this
makes
takes a bit more time.
Yes, about 3 to 6 months. Okay, got it. I think similar to SEO results as well. Adrien, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate you sharing your insights and behind the scenes.
Thanks for having me, Joe. It was a pleasure.
And for everyone watching, listening to today's episode, if you have anyone in your group interested in learning more about AEO, feel free to share this episode. Thank you so much. See you on the next episode.